got to have a firm grip on that whole I am concept to be able to tap into that creativity. So I'm just looking at this as the next step in that. Also, the idea fits in with what we're trying to do at the Tri-State Defender in terms of the observation of our 70th anniversary. We came on board in November, the first week of November 1951, and we've been publishing continuously since that time. And so we decided that we would have a year-long focus on our anniversary. And as part of that, we're really looking at sort of a business focus. We have a special thing that we're doing on diversity and inclusion. We'll be looking at more of that and just highlighting men and women in businesses and highlighting the issues. And so I saw this as just really in conjunction with that. So let me just say from the beginning, from in terms of my entrepreneurial background, I don't own the Tri-State Defender. I don't have any stock in it. I have been with the Tri-State Defender since June of 2007. And so I've been through several administrations, and I'm glad to be part of where we are right now. Before I came to the Tri-State Defender, I worked for my own company. I was the president and CEO of something called SciJack, Scientific Journalism and Communication. And I was actually working with that brought me to the Tri-State Defender to try to convince the interim editor at that time to help me extend this idea of creativity as a source of wealth and what we might need to do as a community to bring that about. And at that time, he had a particular need, which was for me to be a journalist. And so I went with him, and just a lot of things have happened since that time. As Paula mentioned, I did work at the Commercial Appeal, I can say it by name, for 26 years, 6 months, 3 weeks, and 2 days. And that was quite an experience. And you can take what you want from the idea from the fact that I know each day. Okay, but I will say that I got an opportunity to cover a number of business stories along the way and heighten my appreciation for it. And I just think maybe going all the way back, my dad was a garbage worker, but on the side, he was, I guess you'd call like Sanford and Son. He had a truck just like Sanford and Son. And used to pick up cans and garbage and work in a few office businesses. And so that gave me some exposure to business. But I think the thing that really got me going was just a happenstance. I happened to step into a class one day in junior high school, after school class on junior achievement. I'd never heard of junior achievement, but I just walked in and got an idea of what they were talking about. I joined up. We created our own little company. We broke it down into different companies. In our company, we made trunk retainers. Back in the day, they didn't have these automatic cards. You go to a grocery store, or whatever, and your trunk would fly up. So we got together and we made these little parts and these little trunk retainers. And then I learned the value of marketing because we sold them for $1. And I came up with this idea to say to people that you could buy this trunk retainer, and it's $1 for the youth of America. And I tell you, they started selling like hotcakes, So I've learned along the way the value of business, but also the value of marketing. So I feel like in a way, I'm coming full circle. So, when I was looking at the different backgrounds of everyone here, and I was thinking, okay, we need some type of context to get started here. And so what I want to do is just draw a little bit from some of the facts that I saw associated with each of the individuals. And then we'll just get into let them have an introduction of themselves first before we then get into the questions. But when I was looking at Ms. Shelby's, what she does over there, and particularly the 800 initiative, I saw this set of facts. It said that of the 69,000 privately owned firms in Memphis, 62% of them are minority owned. It said that these firms, however, account for less than 3% of the $36.5 billion in revenue that Memphis generates annually. And then also about 97% of these firms are run and operated solely by their owners with no additional employees for support, and that most of these businesses are suffering from a lack of access to resources like capital funds and business acceleration programs. So I think that is a good base of information to have as we go forward. And then as I was looking at the BBA, I heard Mr. Strickland, or saw where Mr. Strickland made this comment. He said there is a heightened awareness and intentionality around the value of creating wealth in the African-American community. I certainly am interested in hearing him address that. And he also said that when Memphis is able to speak to wealth creation, in addition to addressing poverty, he said, then we will shift the conversation and ultimately shift the outcomes. Again, that's a good base upon which to have a conversation. And then over at the Crew Center, this stuck out to me. It said in Mr. Hoffmeyer and in the group, and talking about the Crew Center, it said that every student benefits from having and exercising an entrepreneurial mindset. Yeah, so it's like, what is an entrepreneurial mindset? And how can we go about this business of making sure that every student is exposed to this entrepreneurial mindset? And then Ms. Landis, who I've known for such a long time, but some facts associated with what she's doing over there now with Oteka. It says that in 1972, there were a little over 400,000 women-owned businesses, and that today there are 13 million plus, generating $1.8 trillion a year to the economy. And this stuck out to me. It said that 64% of all women-owned businesses were started by women of color. And of course, she runs her company with her daughter. So we're looking to hear more about that. And then Mr. Mcgee, this was interesting to me. What jumped out to me is that he has put his hands on the worth and the value of how you take a passion. And he has a passion for seeing the protection and preservation of one's of a community heritage. Now he does a lot of things, but he's found a way to tap into that passion that he has about that and build it into what he does as a business and make it part of a business model. And I think that whole idea of being able to associate your worth and value, your passion relative to what you're doing is really a baseline thing. So with all of those things said, then let's go ahead then and get into our panelists. And why don't we start with Ms. Dobbins, and you just introduce yourself to the discussion.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. K. Oteka Technologies is a low voltage security camera access control business that we're going to be about 6 years old in March. Just very, very happy to be here. Second generation business owner. I learned the majority of what I know from my father, watching him grow businesses here in Memphis, Tennessee. His first business he started in the early 70s was called Dobbins Maintenance. And he actually grew that business and had approximately 300 employees as an African-American man coming from Mississippi to the big city of Memphis and starting that career. So at the time I grew up, I thought that was normal. I thought that's what everybody did, having him as a father. My mother was a school teacher. And so seeing the ups and downs of entrepreneurship was commonplace in my home. But as I got older, I realized that is not common in the African-American community, that is something that is, it used to be common before desegregation, because we had to have businesses in order to function. It's not as common today. And hearing those statistics, Dr. K, that you just threw out, also shares how much work needs to be done. If we have that amount of African-American businesses, but the majority of them are single-headed businesses without employees, then as Ernest has said, Ernest Strickland at BBA, how do we grow wealth in the African-American community, particularly in a city like Memphis that is 67% African-American with a very low poverty level, so a very high poverty level. So we've got to look at solutions in order for our great city, or the potentially great city that we have, to be able to be the great city that we can make it And one of those solutions is to grow African-American businesses. Otika is in the heart of Whitehaven. That's where I grew up. There was a murder on the corner a couple of months ago. There's always something going on. I mean, we have to have bars on our doors, but I'm hoping that through this initiative of us growing African-American businesses, we can take a bite out of crime. We can help the poverty and make wealth in the African-American community. And then the African-American community can then be a more vibrant solution to the healing the wounds of our community and the microcosm to help Memphis as a whole, because we will never grow and attract the businesses that we need if we don't grow those businesses here and allow those businesses to have wealth so they can then give back to the community.
That's right. Well, your dad was a great guy. I had a wonderful opportunity to work with him over the years. Thank you so very much. Brother Mcgee, tell us a little bit about yourself. I know that you're the owner of MDM Investments of Memphis. Give us your introduction, please.
Hello. Thank you, Dr. K. My name is Michael Mcgee. Is it on? Okay. My name is Michael Mcgee, and I'm a native Memphian. Been here for 44 years. I'm a graduate of University of Memphis. I'm a serial real estate investor. I started out as a loan officer. So as a loan officer, I was putting together deals to provide mortgages. And I realized that I could work on more mortgages than showing houses. I can only show one house at a time. So I took that path of being a mortgage loan officer. Then I got into doing more investing. And as I start, my appetite for information allowed me to assemble land and start buying up properties because I saw the migration going back into the urban areas. And I'm gonna touch on that a little bit more and when we get into it. But I want to leave it there because I have some good meat and potatoes for you guys.
Okay, meat and potatoes, I love that. All right. Mr. Hoffmeyer, over at the Cruise Center, tell us a little bit about yourself in addition to the Cruise Center.
Sure. So I'm Mike Hoffmeyer. I'm the director over at the Cruise Center for Entrepreneurship here at the University of Memphis. Just as a quick intro, the Cruise Center is a non-academic unit that exists to inspire, train, and support and develop and educate aspiring young student entrepreneurs. That's something we're very passionate about. We work very closely with Shelby and Brian over at CBU as well on some of our community-facing efforts. But me, I was a military brat. My dad was in the Navy. We were stationed in Memphis twice. I went to middle school here, did most of my high school overseas, came back, graduated from Craigmont, where I also went to middle school, two-time graduate of University of Memphis. But I spent some time enlisted in the Navy, and that showed me or demonstrated to me that was not the path for me. And it's what lit the entrepreneurial spark in me. And I had a passion for technology. I had a passion for entrepreneurship, and that led me down a path to a career of technology startups where I found an industry expertise in electronic payments. So I spent almost 20 years in various electronic payments startups, and I've experienced every stage of that from early stage startups, some of which didn't make it, all the way through scaling to multi-million-dollar enterprises. And that perhaps ironically led me back to University of Memphis, where I help others achieve those same dreams.
Gotcha. Great, thank you. Ms. Shelby, let's turn to you. Let's say I'm a student with a dream. I understand then that the Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation should be part of my life. Tell me a little bit about yourself and your connection to the center.
Sure, of course. So hi, everyone. My name is Shelby Peranich, and thank you for inviting me to be here. I'm really honored to be here with all of y'all. So I am the Associate Director of the Center for Entrepreneurship at Christian Brothers University. I've been at the center for over a year and a half now. Brian Behringer, the director of the center, is also on this call as well, listening in. Brian and I really work together to boost student entrepreneurs at the university. That's through programming and events, but also through the design of academic related curriculum as well. And then another thing that we do at the center is support the 800 initiative too. And the center has 3 pillars, but I believe that I'll get into that a little more later as well. I can explain. But yeah, so I've been, like I said, I've been at the center for a little over a year and a half. I was previously with an entrepreneurial support organization here in Memphis. I spent the last 6 years supporting and working with entrepreneurs, where among other functions of my job there, I grew our investments in Black business owners through business accelerators for tech startups and for minority-owned businesses through the 800 initiative, which I'll also get to talk about here today a little bit too. Yeah, so I'm in the business of entrepreneurial support here in any way to help founders, especially underrepresented founders, get the resources they need to be successful.
Great. Welcome again. Mr. Strickland, welcome. Great. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Great. Let's turn to you and tell us a little bit about yourself. We know you spent a number of years with the Chamber, but you even had a life before then. So sort of introduce yourself to the group.
All right. Thank you. So Ernest Strickland, President, CEO of the Black Business Association. I've been in that role for about 9-10 months, maybe not quite a year. Prior to joining the BBA, as was mentioned, I spent 15 years with the Chamber of Commerce, working in the areas of workforce development, international business development, economic development, public policy, you name it. And before that, I was actually an entrepreneur. I own a couple of businesses, from consulting firms to real estate brokerage and investment firms, and even a restaurant, which was a nightmare. But learned a lot of lessons about, just resilience. A funny story, I invested in that restaurant as the passive investor. And 3 weeks in, I'm running the show. I told my partners, I said, we're going to fail. They said, why? I said, because I know more than both of you, and I don't know what I'm doing. And so that was a recipe for failure. But, I'm just passionate about Memphis. As Michael mentioned, I'm a native Memphian, graduate of Hamilton High School. Love Hamilton. And also graduate of University of Memphis, as well as Bethel University, where I received my MBA. So thanks again for having me on the call.
Great. Well, okay. Well, thank you all for the introduction. I want to start with something that I mentioned earlier, Mr. Hoffmeyer. This idea that you want your students to have an entrepreneurial mindset, and not just the students that are going into business. This idea that all students should have an entrepreneurial mindset. What is an entrepreneurial mindset?
It's a tough question, because there are so many different definitions for that. Even in the academic space, I think, entrepreneurial mindset and entrepreneurship. I did some research on this a few years back, and I think there were 28 different official academic definitions, which is kind of silly. So we tend to just leverage our own experience and explain it ourselves. For me, an entrepreneurial mindset is really a set of attributes and characteristics that one develops over time. I won't talk about whether entrepreneurs are born or made, because that's like a holy war amongst people. I firmly believe that that you can learn entrepreneurship and an entrepreneurial mindset, but the mindset itself is focused on value creation. It's focused on adaptability and agility, critical thinking, problem solving, and it's not necessarily focused on business, right? Which is why you'll see me use the terms entrepreneurial mindset and entrepreneurship. And those are two different things to me. Entrepreneurship is, the relentless pursuit of opportunity, regardless of resources currently controlled. and that assumes sort of a business, or you're creating some sort of value organization. Entrepreneurial mindset is something that's valuable to everyone, whether you're going to be an entrepreneur or not. And if you look at some of the academic research about what the 21st century skill set consists of, there's about a 40% overlap of entrepreneurial mindset and those 21st century skills. What that tells you is that entrepreneurial mindset is a critical piece of what it takes to be successful at work in the 21st century. And so that's one of the reasons that we're focused on this. Every student should have an entrepreneurial mindset piece, because that's what it takes to survive in the gig economy, to survive when we don't know what the future looks like, to survive during things like a pandemic where most people saw problems and doom and gloom, where if you have an entrepreneurial mindset, what you saw was a boatload of new opportunities opening, because all of these problems suggested people had needs that you could fill and solve. So that's sort of the short answer of what it means to have an entrepreneurial mindset and why it's important.
So I'm going to stick on that theme for just a moment, Mr. Landis, because when I was listening to your introduction and what little I know about your background, you grew up in an environment, a home environment, where the entrepreneurial mindset was a way of life, is what I take it. And then just that sort of awareness that you got later that, hey, you know what, that's not standard. So then how did, is it just a matter of exposure to that?
I would think exposure is quite important, which is why sometimes in our inner city schools, you have so many children talking about playing a professional sport or becoming an entertainer, and absolutely nothing wrong with those things, but they're not really exposed to seeing, Black women, Black men in charge of corporations, or learning about entrepreneurship. And so it becomes a real issue that we do, we have to give back that way. But I do agree that entrepreneurship can be trained, and it is a mindset. I tend to think that some of us who've started businesses are a little crazy, because it's so challenging that, it's unbelievable, really, the amount of barriers that are in place. And so I can't imagine, 40 years ago starting a business, because today it is tough. And, we're going to stay cheerful in the face of these obstacles, but we need so many more resources. So thankful for you, Mr. Hoffmeyer, and you, Shelby. I'm not going to try to butcher your last name, but and for Ernest and the advocacy organizations, and for the Tri-State, because kudos to those businesses, the Tri-State, that have been in business for that amount of time. But it is absolutely a problem. And so sometimes, as my children can witness, it is, who would want to do this? You really, it is as tough as can be. And you have to really pull out all of your strength and prayers and everything in order to try to be successful. And so these kinds of programs are really needed in our community, so that, and it needs to be continual and to a larger audience, so that we can give exposure. And so that many more people know that this is an opportunity. In my previous lifetime, I worked for the government in capacity to try to grow minority and women-owned businesses. And so I was able to sit on that side of the table and bring my experience from this side of the table. And so it gave me a better appreciation of both sides. And so we look forward to doing more programs like this, and increasing our exposure, those of us who decided to open the businesses, and show that you can be successful doing this, not just professional sports and rapping and so on and so forth, that you can use your brain and your network to determine your net worth.